Hello everyone, it's Daz, and this week's discussion is on the reality of demonic possession, and I'll be reading from an article published by the Telegraph on June 3rd, 2018, and then briefly discuss my thoughts on it. Demonic possession is real, and victims seeking exorcism should not be ignored, prominent psychiatrists on the world beyond. It is a phenomenon that is on the rise throughout the world. The number of cases of demonic possession and demands for priests to carry out exorcisms is, according to multiple sources, soaring. Medical science remains skeptical. However, a Princeton and Yale-educated mainstream psychiatrist believes demonic possession is indeed very real and claims that the majority of Americans agree with him. With 25 years' experience in a private psychiatric practice and as a professor at the New York Medical College and Columbia University, Dr. Richard Gallagher has a rare vantage point to observe human behavior. And then there is the inhuman Gallagher. He is also a sought-after psychiatrist for discernment, the initial step in determining the need for exorcism. Dr. Gallagher has evaluated hundreds of cases of possible possession, and in a wide-ranging and rare interview with the Telegraph, explains why he believes the phenomenon is genuine. In April, a Vatican training course for exorcist priests, participants were told that the demand for exorcisms is booming as a result of a decline in the Christian faith, and the internet providing easy access to black magic, the occult, and Satanism. They're very, very smart. The intelligence level of a fallen angel, which is what I call them, is far superior to human beings. Dr. Gallagher on demons. Pope Francis has repeatedly reminded his followers that Satan is a real being, roaming the earth to devour souls like a lion. In April he wrote, "Hence, we should not think of the devil as a myth, a representation, a symbol, a figure of speech, or an idea. This mistake would lead us to let down our guard, to grow careless and end up more vulnerable." He observed that life can be a constant struggle against the devil, the prince of evil. Last year, speaking to the priests attending a Vatican course on confession, the Pope said, "Confessors should not hesitate to refer penitents who are suffering from genuine spiritual disturbances to exorcists," describing the rite of exorcism as a delicate and necessary ministry. The Pope admonished that exorcist priests must be selected with great care and great prudence. In the U.S., the number of priests exorcists has increased from 12 to 50 over the past decade. While demand for the exorcism continues to surge, Dr. Gallagher's medical assessment of whether a person is mentally ill or possessed by demons will determine whether some exorcisms are conducted. He is not the only American psychiatrist who evaluates for possession. There are many others who consult on discernment, but Dr. Gallagher is one of the few who is willing to talk about it. He also written a forthcoming book on the subject, being published by HarperCollins, called Demonic Foes, a Psychiatrist investigates demonic possession in the modern United States. There are many other psychiatrists and mental health care professionals who do what I do, perhaps not to the scope that I do, who seem hesitant to speak out, he explained. That's what gives my work some singularity, that I have had so much experience, and that I'm willing to speak out. I feel an obligation to speak out. I think that I should. Of the cases referred to him for possible possession, he noted that there are people who suffer tremendously. There is very strict criteria for determining the person's problem. I am not just intuiting. I'm dealing with it from a very scientific point of view, he said. Speaking to the Telegraph at the office in Westchester County, New York, Dr. Gallagher said that while possession is very rare, in his medical opinion, it is real. There are cases of spirit possession in pretty much every culture, he said. He has evaluated cases referred to him by priests, rabbis, Christian ministers, and representatives of other spiritual traditions. Dr. Gallagher does not view himself as being outside the American mainstream in his beliefs about the existence of demons, noting that the United States is a more religious country than somewhat secular countries in Europe. He cited poll numbers indicating that about 70 to 75% of Americans believe in the devil, and at least half of those believe that demons have the ability to affect human beings, possessed or otherwise. How does exorcism work? Then you can go to some countries like Madagascar, where about 100% of the population believes in spirit possession, he said, so it varies a lot from country to country. Haiti is another country that believes a lot in demons and spirit possession. It depends on the subculture you're addressing. Some secular subcultures on the East Coast and the West Coast of the United States are very skeptical, but the majority of Americans are not only open to these ideas, but believe them, so I don't feel that I am out of the mainstream. At one time, Dr. Gallagher, a board-certified psychiatrist with a primary focus on individual psychotherapy and psychopharmacology, was also doubtful. Although a practicing Catholic, he had never volunteered to evaluate people for possession, but early in his medical career, two prominent exorcists, one of whom helped found the International Association of Exorcists, referred cases to him that were so dramatic, he concluded that possession exists. One such flamboyant and dramatic case was that of Julia. Julia, a once-in-a-century case of possession. Julia gave Dr. Gallagher permission to write about her on the condition that her name and other identifying information such as where she lived in the U.S. be changed. Other than those details, he said he took no literary license in telling her story. A direct worshiper of Satan and a self-described high priestess of a cult, Julia's demonic possession was not in question. The core concern for the exorcism team was whether she could leave the cult so that the exorcism would succeed in liberating her from possession. Dr. Gallagher was brought onto the team to talk to her about her ambivalence in leaving the cult and her fears and anxieties about the possession. The cult was like a home to Julia, and she was in love with the cult leader. She told Dr. Gallagher regarding the cult's power over her. The sex orgies are a pretty big part of it, but it was not just the sex. Julia had paranormal abilities that did not exist before joining the cult, according to Dr. Gallagher. She directly attributed these abilities to Satan. I worship Satan. I don't know about this God thing. There's a lot of crap in the world. I don't see how people can believe in a good God. But Satan, I know. He gives me favors. Julia reveled in her psychic ability and demonstrated her powers for Dr. Gallagher. At 3 a.m. one morning, the Gallaghers, normally placid cats, went berserk, fighting in the couple's bedroom, and had to be separated. Such behavior had never happened before and had never happened since. Later that morning, Dr. Gallagher was introduced to Julia for the first time. According to the psychiatrist, the first thing out of her mouth was, "So, Dr. Gallagher, how did you like the cats last night? I even have a letter from her to a priest that says, 'We raised a little hell in Dr. Gallagher's house last night.'" On another occasion, Julia demonstrated her ability at remote viewing. She told Dr. Gallagher, "We really hate Father," referring to a priest on the exorcism team. She explained that it was her job to keep an eye on him, although she lived in a different part of the United States, whereupon she described the priest at that moment, walking along a beach in his blue windbreaker and khaki pants, and he's saying prayers. Dr. Gallagher promptly called the priest on his mobile phone and confirmed everything that Julia had described. The priest noted that normally he would be in his rectory at the time, but on that particular day, had decided to say his breviary while walking on the beach. A sign of true possession is the victim going into a trance as the demons take over the body. The victim of full-blown possession typically will not recall what happened after coming out of the trance. In his multiple consultations with Julia, Dr. Gallagher heard a demonic voice taking over. The voice would say things from Julia's body such as, "Leave her alone, you effing priest. You monkey priest. She's ours." The voices would continue for about 5 minutes, and then she would come out of the trance. Julia would then say to him, "What just went on?" Dr. Gallagher heard the same voice break into a phone conversation with one of the exorcism team priests. Julia was thousands of miles from his office in New York at the time, speaking with the priest about Julia's next exorcism. The doctor explained that because of a scheduling conflict, he would not be able to attend. The same voice that had emanated from Julia while she was in a trance now broke into the call, stating, "We told you, she's ours. You leave her alone." Dr. Gallagher asked the priest on the call if he had heard the voice too, to which the priest replied, "Yes, it's a dramatic case." Julia feared for her life in the satanic cult, and also worried that the cult leader was falling out of love with her because she was aging, and just as crazy person might fear being labeled possessed, Julia feared being labeled crazy and being admitted to a mental hospital, but her exorcism, consisting of multiple attempts, ultimately failed because she could not leave the cult and continue to worship Satan. Gallagher number 2, about a year after the last failed attempt at liberation of Julia, called one of the team priests and said she went to resume the exorcism because she had cancer and did not want to die demonically possessed. The priest, described by Dr. Gallagher as a very kindly man, told her that he wanted Dr. Gallagher to evaluate her again. Although he believed that Julia always told the truth, Dr. Gallagher requested permission to review medical records from her oncologist. Julia told him that she had to think about it. He and the priest never heard from her again and presumed that she died. Demonic Foes, a psychiatrist investigates demonic possession in the modern United States. Dr. Gallagher's forthcoming book will be the first mainstream publication by an experienced, highly credentialed American psychiatrist presenting research and case studies on church-referred discernment. In an endorsement of Dr. Gallagher's research, Joseph English, former psychiatry department chairman at New York Medical College, stated, "Contrary to a widespread impression, such phenomena, suspected demonic possession, not only continue to be reported in today's world, but they still defy easy explanation as a simplistically conceived medical or psychiatric disorder." Two of the most popular books published to date on demonic possession are Glimpses of the Devil by Scott Peck and Hostages to the Devil by Malachi Martin. Both authors are deceased. Dr. Gallagher described his book as a much broader treatment of the subject of possession. He goes into the history of the concept, how to discern, and which case cause confusion, and describe people who may think they are possessed but are not. Such people could be suffering from seizure disorders or other neurological disorders, such as temporal lobe epilepsy. People hearing the devil's voice might be psychotic and having auditory hallucinations. Others suffering from delusions that they are possessed might be bipolar, schizophrenic, or have drug-related conditions. And I'm going to stop right here because there's a lot more to read. I read about half of the article. But as you can see, just from those cases, it is interesting that we're seeing more of an effort from mainstream news outlets to sort of shed light on the existence of demonic possession. And I find this very fascinating as well. I do believe demonic possession is very real. I've talked about other cases that have come up across the world on this channel. And I've done a few videos dedicated to the subject of demonic possession. And this is why it's so important that we do our best to not leave any doors open to unclean spirits. And they mentioned that it is uncommon. I would say that true possession, I would agree, is uncommon. I do believe in severe forms of oppression that occur. But it's so important to remember Luke 10:19, Ephesians 6, about the sort of power that we have as believers over Satan, and that we can resist him. But for those who are unprotected, it can be easy for them to fall prey to demonic possession. And this really stands out to me as well too, because as I work on publishing my second novel, it deals with demonic possession, and I came across this and I thought I'd share it with all of you. But I'd like to know what you guys' thoughts are on this. And if you're interested in reading this article in its entirety, I can link it in the description box down below. But I hope that you enjoyed this video and that you have a wonderful week. Take care and God bless.